Okay. I want to bring you back in. I want to ask you one burning question. You're a biologist. I have two biologists here. I have a burning question that has been asked recently. I'm wondering if you can help out with. I know that it can't be answered by Supreme Court justices. What is a woman?
Oh, you do not want me to go down this road, because sex determination and development, I mean, Dr. Jeanson is probably more familiar with developmental biology than I am, but that's a really complicated question, especially when you consider the complexities of human biology. I talk in class about sex determination, chromosomal determinants, hormonal determinants, genetic determinants.
What determines sex?
There is no answer to that question that I could answer in the time that we have tonight.
Really? Okay.
It is a really complicated question.
So it's not a question of chromosome X versus Y?
100% no. It's not.
And no.
You can ask me the question 12 different ways if you want, but you're going to get the same answer each time.
I don't think it's all that complex. I would answer it very simply. A woman is what God, who created the women, defines it as. God created her. He gets to give the definition. So a woman is what God calls a woman.
This is Apologetics Live. To answer your questions, your host from Striving for Eternity Ministries, Andrew Rappaport.
We are live, a little bit late, but still live. Apologetics Live, here to answer your most challenging questions you have about God and the Bible. Don't know what the cause was with the internet there, that we were delayed, but I'm your host, Andrew Rappaport. And as we say here at Apologetics Live, we can answer any question you have about God and the Bible. And if you doubt that, well, do as someone did on Twitter this week and ask me a really challenging question. And my response was, I don't know. Because that actually is an answer. But we are here to answer challenging questions, to teach and to demonstrate how to do apologetics, which is a defense of the Christian faith. And we are going to talk tonight about, well, women's sports. I don't usually talk about sports at all. Seems like a strange topic for me to pick up. But are there really only two sexes? Can men, or men that think they're women, play in women's basketball? That's really been a hot topic recently. Even in tennis recently, there was just a ruling about whether, or a controversy over whether men can play in female tennis. So that's going to be a topic tonight. Of course, if you guys want to come in or ask questions, you could do so many ways. One is to join us. And that way is to go to apologeticslive.com. You see it scrolling on the bottom, apologeticslive.com. Scroll down to the duck icon, join us there. Andrew from Down Under is saying, where is Andrew now? I was just delayed. I am sorry about that. I don't quite know. It was trying to initialize the stream and just was not working. And then it kind of failed, and then it gave it like 5 minutes before I could try to reinitialize again. So sorry about the delay there, Andrew. But I do want to give a shout out to those in the Middle Eastern, the Arab countries. I was looking earlier that we're ranking on several Muslim countries for this podcast in the category of Christianity. And at first, that kind of threw me. I was like, that seems odd, because I wouldn't think Christian apologetics would be something that would be big within a Muslim country. And then I started thinking about it, especially since we have been dealing with a lot of how to respond to Muslims and answer what Islam teaches, that there's probably a lot of Christians in those countries that are trying to get answers on how to do apologetics to Muslims. So it kind of ended up making sense after all. So with that, I want to kick off our topic for tonight. I should say there was some discussion whether we're going to have a debate tonight. We had the Jonathan who came in, Crypto Spooky? Let me go look at his handle again. I forget. I'm trying to pull it up. But Twitchy Theologian offered to do a debate, and we had we are trying to set that up, and it is, here we go. It is, Jonathan was Crypto Shady. Crypto Shady was his handle. And so we're trying to set that up. I will say just the latest right now, we couldn't get it set up for this week because Crypto Shady, who, what was that, like 2 weeks ago, we tried to set this up. And so he said it took him until basically like Wednesday his time, Tuesday our time, to be able to send an email. Now, he knows how to do crypto, buy crypto and stuff like that, do blockchain, but doesn't know how to get email to work. I don't know. Maybe when he comes on, he can explain. But Twitchy is willing to do it. Jerry is his name, and I'm going to mention that just because he could not do it this week. He's got some things in his family. I'm going to ask for you all to just be praying for Jerry, and just some things he's dealing with as a family. So therefore, he wants to wait until the 27th or sometime in September. He has a debate topic that he proposed, and we're just waiting for Jonathan to give a response. So maybe the 27th we'll have a debate. We will see. We're hoping so. I see Wesley out there. So Wesley, you got to give me a call because I got to find out whether we're going to do that special episode with some film that you got. I haven't heard from you. All right. So let's talk about female sports. Now, I will honestly admit I don't watch a lot of team sports. I don't even have time nowadays to watch any sports, but I prefer to watch tennis and mixed martial arts. And I have not watched either for a very long time just because of time. And so I know that there's been a big brouhaha because, well, at first there was a white straight woman in the WNBA, and WNBA stands for the Women's National Basketball Association. Just let that name sink in because we're going to come back to that. But there was a white woman who was getting a lot of attention. And because of that, a lot of people were watching the WNBA. Now, what I've learned over the past few weeks is that the WNBA has never made money. In other words, they pay people to play. They have stadiums. They're just not making money on it. They're subsidized by the men's basketball. It's actually not the men's. It's just the NBA, the National Basketball Association. So if there was women that thought they were talented enough, I guess they could, play in the NBA. But they have their own league for the women, and that's called the Women's National Basketball Association. And so for that reason, we're going to talk about that, whether women should be playing in it or should men be playing in it. And so I will state, though, for the record, I don't follow it, but I've been following some of the news on it. Now, it's interesting. Not enough women participate or make money. You get a star where people are enjoying to watch her play, and people are now filling stadiums for the WNBA. And what do you have? You have all the other players of other teams beating her up because she's doing better than them. They should be thrilled. They should be thrilled because it helps all the women in the WNBA if one is doing well. From what I understand, they don't like her because she's white and straight. I forget the percentage I heard of how many lesbians are in the WNBA. Many are black, but you have two. I think the team is Indiana Fever is the team, I believe. You're seeing my ignorance on this sport. I grant that. My area is better in theology, which we're going to get to. And so what we see, though, is that you had another white woman that was defending her teammate. And really what got it going, and I do find it interesting when I say that this one woman was being fouled so often. She leads in being people fouling her. It is interesting because now the refs, I did see video where one woman just clipped her with an elbow, and she was the one that they fouled. It's like, what did she do wrong? Did she get her teeth in the way of the person's elbow? And when you saw, it was clearly the black player was trying to do harm. And so we see this. Now there's a player who was defending her. I became aware of it only because of all the memes of this blonde pointing her finger, sticking her hand out. And I don't even remember the names. But it became something where now they asked her about her position on sports and men playing in women's sports. And she said that she believes that women should be protected, even children. And part of that would be to allow only women in women's sports. Now, I am kind of confused because the name of this organization is the Women's National Basketball Association. You would think, just maybe, I could be wrong, maybe you should only allow women for the Women's National Basketball Association. There is another basketball association called the National Basketball Association that seems to only have men. Why is it, simple question, why is it that it is only men that want to identify as women playing in the women's league? You don't have any women identifying as men so they could play in the men's league. Could it be? I don't know. Could it be that maybe everyone knows that men and women are different, and men at that elite level can play better in sports than those who are even at the elite level in the women's? So that's something I think everyone knows. And even as we did the opening with a Rutgers biology professor, he takes a whole semester to define sex and gender. Let me bring Andrew in from down under. I was going to say good evening, but I think it's more good morning or good afternoon for you, right? How are you, sir?
Good morning. Very good. It's 20 past 10.
All right, there we go. So how can we help? Any questions you have for us today?
I thought I'd better come in and offer some kind of level on sports, since sports is an interest of mine.
In other words, since I'm completely and utterly clueless when it comes to team sports. I mean, if you want to talk MMA, I could talk about rear naked chokes and arm bars, leg locks. I could discuss those things. If you want to talk tennis, we could discuss that. Basketball. Sorry.
Well, I mean, basketball is not a strong point that I understand, but I do have a view on trans women, and they shouldn't be in sport at all. They shouldn't be trying to play against men, because in the soccer field, especially, the American women's team tried to take on an under-15s team, and they got sorely beaten. And the game didn't even complete, and it was like 20 points to 0, something like that, by half time.
The thing is that I would counter a little. Let me see if I can find a middle ground. If there were people that claim to be trans, men that claim they're women, and women that claim they're men, why don't they have their own trans league?
Because they can't.
Well, they could. I mean, would it be that Would it be that there wouldn't be the advantage for the men playing in a trans league because they're playing with other men who couldn't hack it at the elite level, and so they're going to try and be elite in the women's league? Right?
Yep,
I mean,
that's the problem.
Create their own. That's a solution.
Yeah.
I mean, when I don't know if you've had this down in Australia, but in America, there was a big thing about allowing men dressed as women to go into the women's bathrooms, and people should be able to pick which bathroom they go in.
Yep,
And-
I'm sure we've had that issue here. Yep.
And I said an easy solution to that. There's two easy solutions. One, and I would talk to liberals about this, and I'd say, well, why don't we just remove the signs on the door altogether?
Mhm.
And I would usually ask this of liberal women, because the liberal women would say, no, because you men would be gawking at us or putting us in danger. But you want to let men dressed as women. Like,
Yeah.
right? They understand
One
the
of the
same,
issues.
but somehow if they're in a dress, it's all okay, right? But
Yeah, it's-
another solution I would have is just, why don't we just remove all group bathrooms and group showers and make individual stalls? Everything's individual with its own locking door.
mhm.
I had
That's all
said it's a solution that absolutely works. And I was watching someone in our government, in the Senate, who proposed that very thing when they were trying to pass a bill to allow people to choose their own bathrooms. And someone wanted to change the bill to make it a law that all bathrooms had to be individually and locked. So you can't even peek underneath or anything like that. And all of the liberals were against that, saying that was discrimination.
Mhm.
Wait a minute. How is that discrimination? Right? I mean, but this is the thing, because it really isn't about the bathroom, or in this case, the sport. It's
No.
about political agenda,
Mhm.
right?
And ability.
Well, the ability issue is something where the issue there is because they know that when a man versus woman, and I know in tennis that Billie Jean King played against a man and she won, but she was like a top 10 athlete and he wasn't.
Yeah.
Now, if Billie Jean King would want to have gone up against any of the top 10 men, I don't think she would have won.
No, I think she'd lose too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was a journalist, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, he played tennis, but not at the elite level. There's a big difference. I wouldn't win against, Serena Williams.
No,
not-
neither would I.
even if she was, limping on one leg or something, right? Because there's a difference at that athletic level. But what you see is men who can't get into the elite levels that are playing in the women's sports. And what's going to end up happening if this continues, all you're going to have is all transgender, all men that claim to be transgender playing in women's sports. Because as we've seen titles after titles, the women are losing.
Yes.
When you're seeing at the high school level, college level, where this is, and it's all men dressed, pretending to be girls that are taking all the awards and the scholarships. Okay. Whole thing with female sports was a way to help women get scholarships, just like the men do, to be able to get either a free ride for college or a ride, being able to get a discount. So that's something that has, is what some of the reasons we have female sports separate, why we have Title IX in America. So this is something that I think what ends up happening is if this continues, there won't be any female sports. There'll be men's and men pretending to be women sports.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think as we look at this more of a theologically, we have to recognize that there is a reality that sex is knowable, right? Mm-hmm. I played that at the beginning, that clip with the Professor Dan from Rutgers here. He wants to say, oh no, it's so difficult to understand. Well, you can look at it genetically, XXXY.
Mm-hmm. That's what Ken Ham says, and that's what I lean.
Say again?
That's what Ken Ham says, and that's the way I would lean.
Yeah. I mean, there are people will say, oh, but there's some who have an extra chromosome. Yes, that's an anomaly. And generally what you do is you figure out what body parts they have. But
and you go from there.
You can also look at, as I didn't have that in the clip, but when Dan was on, I asked him about bone structure. Because we know from the bone structure, how do we know when we see a skeleton that it's a man versus a female? Because the bone structure is different. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you don't have DNA, you have the bones. And so, what happened in the WNBA is you had this controversy. And there was there's a clothing line called XXXY. It mm-hmm. is a clothing line that is set up to protect women's sports and mm-hmm. men's sports, and they do a lot of things to help promote good causes. I don't own any of their clothing, but I would. Mm-hmm. Consider it because of their, what their mission is. But there were some girls that went to one of the WNBA games just holding up a sign, wearing the XXXY shirts, logos, holding up a sign, just thanking this one woman for standing up for protecting women. And one of the co-owners, now let's put this in context. Teenage girls and a co-owner of a women's basketball team. You would think, Andrew, help me out with this. Maybe I'm not smart enough to figure this out, but high schoolers, teenagers, mm-hmm. versus someone that owns a business. Who do you think should be more mature? Teenagers or a successful businesswoman who has enough money to be part owner of a basketball league?
I would lean towards the woman who's the co-owner of a basketball league. Because she's supposed to be the role model to the others as well, but she's also failing at that.
So, the adult to be more mature, right?
Yeah, you would expect that. you would expect a 50-year-old adult to be more mature than a 30-year-old adult, would you not?
Yes. Well, generally, but there's a bigger difference when it's teenagers mm-hmm. versus someone in their 50s. So
because their brains are still developing, right?
Yeah, but the reality is the teenagers acted more mature than this co-owner who started cursing out these children.
Yeah, yes.
Which is kind of interesting. She is a co-owner of a women's basketball team.
Mm-hmm. And she's losing money on playing on doing this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Based on the evidence.
And there was a coach, one of the coaches who claimed when asked about this controversy, basically, the question was, who's going to be allowed to play? And the coach said that they weren't qualified to answer. And this, same thing that we heard it in Supreme Court Justice. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, only a biologist can answer that. And yet that same justice is making laws and for what men and women can do. Mm-hmm. Or not making laws, but evaluating laws.
Passing the laws. Evaluating and passing.
it's amazing how they pick and choose when they know what a woman is.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is when they say this, and this is apologetically, when somebody tells you that, well, I'm not qualified to answer this on something they've been talking about, right? Mm-hmm. You have these people who are saying they feel very strongly about women's rights. What is a woman? I'm not qualified to answer.
Mm-hmm. What is a woman? I don't know.
Yeah. They have quietly conceded the argument. Mm-hmm. I was in Ocean City, Maryland, doing some open air evangelism. And I was asking, this is when the Dobbs decision was leaked and people were knowing that Roe versus Wade was going to be overturned as a federal level. Mm-hmm. And
which it was.
There was lots of people discussing it. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing open air, I just decided, people were walking by. I'm trying different things to get a crowd. So I just asked, I said, is there anybody out here who supports a woman's right to choose? And I had one guy that just stopped, turned and said, yes. I said, so you believe that a woman has a right to choose what she does with her body? Yes, I support abortion. I support the woman's right to do what she wants with her body. And I said, that's great, sir. Can you answer one question for me? He says, what is it? What is a woman? And he literally blank stare. He did a 90-degree turn and just walked away. No response. He knew he was happy. Because if he defines a woman, now he's got to go against all the transgender stuff. Mm-hmm. Right? He can't have both. Mm-hmm. This is a way we could train ourselves to do apologetics, to argue. What people want to do is put us on the defensive constantly. Mm-hmm. We don't have to take that role.
No, we don't.
We could, and I encourage all of us to practice, and it does take some practice, listening to the argument someone's making, finding something that, in this case, they want to argue for women's rights, and yet they don't want to define what a woman is because they want to allow non-women to play in women's sports, to non-women to pretend to be women. Mm-hmm. And say they want to argue for women's rights. Well, you first have to know what a woman is to argue for their rights. Because remember, the argument in abortion is that a man shouldn't have the right to tell a woman what to do with her body. Mm-hmm. But what do you do when the man is pretending to be a woman and is dressing in a dress?
You call them a cross-dresser?
Yeah. Well, the issue there becomes, as they're trying to argue, that, well, that's okay. We know that then it's a woman when they're pretending to be, but they're not when it comes to the abortion issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can ask them, can a trans woman, with their language, can a trans woman have an abortion?
If they can have a baby, I suppose. But no, they can't have a baby because they don't have a womb.
Yeah, and that's the argument. Someone will ask, can a trans woman have a baby? And people will say, well, yes.
They say the thing about men too. Trans men can have babies.
Well, the trans men can have babies because they have a womb.
Be a woman.
Yeah. So sex is something that we see in Genesis 1:27, as my argument to Professor Dan there. God created the women. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it is God who gets to define what a woman is.
Yeah.
All right. It's observable. There's different features. It is something you could test for. Mm-hmm. It's not something that's assigned, and that's the language that people do, assigned at birth. It's a biological category. It's not an assignment category. And this really is interesting when you have people who say, well, it's that people can identify differently. I find it interesting because people were really upset when there was someone who had darkened her skin, got her hair permed, and claimed to be black. She was the head of a black organization, and it turned out she had 2 white parents.
And
But
she's Swedish.
Black. And they all said no. They ran her out. That's cultural appropriation. Why can't she identify as black? I mean, that's just the amount of melanin in your skin. That's easier to change, as this woman did, than genetics.
Yeah, that's true.
So how come she can't identify that way? In fact, I think I've told this story here before. When that ruling was leaked, I remember being in a grocery store, and being an open air evangelist, I have a voice that carries, and sometimes it can be put to fun use. There was a woman. This is also why my wife doesn't like going in public with me. There was a woman. So we're at the grocery line. There's a woman in front of me, and then there's a woman in front of her, and she is getting her groceries and checking out, and she's talking to the clerk. And she decides to very loudly say, I don't know why there's people that are so stupid to think that a woman shouldn't have the right to do what she wants with her body. So I decided to agree with her. And I said, louder than her, I said, over the woman who was in front of me, I said, ma'am, you're right. People should be able to murder whoever they want.
Yes.
No! What you find is that very often people have arguments that they think work really well in their echo chambers. But when they're challenged, their arguments don't work so well. So this woman, realizing that, she just got challenged, said, well, I wouldn't do it myself. And I said, ma'am, you're right. I wouldn't murder somebody, but we should give others the right to murder whoever they want.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Yeah, what am I doing? I'm calling it what it is, murder. She doesn't like that. And she's trying to use the talking points that have been used over and over and over again. But because she never heard any challenges to it, because, well, Marxists like to censor, they don't want fair. I mean, what do they do when you have someone that wants free speech, like Charlie Kirk? They kill him because they want to silence free speech because they want censorship. It's the only way their arguments make any sense is in an echo chamber. So this woman and argued, well, men shouldn't have a right to tell a woman what to do with their body. I said, ma'am, I agree with you. It was 9 male judges that gave us the abortion rights. We should immediately outlaw it until we have enough women on the Supreme Court to decide to make it legal. In fact, when you do look at the stats, women, 60% of the women are for pro-life, not abortion. So if you just let all the women vote, abortion would be illegal. So she was really getting frustrated, and she tried her last argument, to which she turned to me. Now, remind you, how am I doing? I'm using absurdity. This is what it says in Scripture of, answering a fool according to their folly. I'm not allowing her, right? It's actually 2 proverbs right next to each other. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Don't answer a fool according to his folly. Sorry. Lest I'm trying to remember how exactly it was. Lest you be foolish. I forget the second part. But the point being is, if you're going to answer a fool and you're going to let them tout their ignorance without calling it out, then you're the one being foolish there. You answer the fool by exposing their foolishness, as I was doing with this woman, right? I'm not letting her get away with it's a woman's choice. No, it's murder. She never denied it was murder, by the way. She could have said, it's not murder, and we could have gone a different route, but she didn't. So she finally turns and says, well, you being a man shouldn't tell me what I should be able to do with my body. To which I just politely responded, ma'am, how dare you? I never told you how I identify.
Now that would be funny.
Well, it's what I said. And to which she had this look of an incredulous look on her face. Just, she didn't know what to say to that because she knows I'm a man. But in her liberal worldview, she can't deny me if I identify that way. To which she just got up and walked out. She paid. She had already paid. She walked out frustrated. And she's stomping her foot as she goes. Now, I want to, I always want to give an opportunity to share the gospel because I usually give the gospel tracts to the clerks. And so, but this was to the woman in front of me and the cashier who was agreeing with the woman up to that point. I wanted to try and have a good testimony with them as well. And so I turned to the two of them. I said, I'm sorry, because the cashier was ready to kind of defend it at a couple points. But I said, I'm really sorry, but my mother always taught me that we should keep our opinions to ourselves. And the cashier opened her mouth to start trying to defend. Basically, she started to attack me for speaking out because somehow that would be wrong. Like this woman speaking loudly was okay. But all of a sudden, the lady in front of me turns and says, yeah, what's with that woman talking about things like that in public? And the cashier shut up.
Yeah, that's funny.
And so this is the same thing with women's basketball. We should not be sitting here and letting them make their arguments. Well, this is just being fair.
No, it's not being fair.
Arguing that sex can be determined, or be identified rather than something that is from nature. No. Don't even play that game. God created male and female. Male and female are to marry. Okay, Genesis 1:27. You can look that up. You can look up Matthew 19 verse 4. When asked about marriage, he said in the beginning, referring back to Genesis 1:27, God made them male and female. When did he, form them? Well, according to Psalm 139, verses 13 and 14, God formed us in inward parts. In our mother's womb, he knit us together. So God had done that at the beginning. So I'm just looking at some of the comments. Okay. So the thing we have to see is, if people want to argue this, okay, if you can't define what a woman is, and this is a challenge you can give them, if someone you ask them, what is a woman? If you can't define a woman, then you have no moral right to profit off a woman's National Basketball Association, right? Because you're profiting off of a woman's sport, but you can't define what a woman is.
But how can you profit off something that's unprofitable?
Well, that's a good point. Trust me, I'm sure that the owners are profiting.
Yeah, certainly.
It's league that's not, right? It's the individual teams.
It's because guys don't go and watch it. That's another big thing.
Yeah, and it's mostly men who watch sports. Men who have too much fans, just saying. I don't know. I don't know how guys have the time to watch sports. I'll just say.
And they also slow the game down.
Who? Men and women? Oh.
The women, they slow the game down. They have to slow the game down because otherwise they can't play. And if you put them up against someone in their own sports, so if you put the women's USA team up against the men's team are going to beat them.
Yeah. Well, when I remember the U.S. Open for tennis made a big deal one year where they're going to start showing equality and they were going to pay women equal to men. And I think the other tournaments started doing the same. And I don't think that's fair. And I'll tell you why.
No, not unless they can afford it.
to play a best out of 5 and the women play a best out of 3. Men don't have as long of a career because they're having to compete harder, longer, and it takes more wear and tear on their body. So if you're going to argue that it's for fairness, you've just made it unfair by paying the women to play less. They don't have to play as much. They don't have to do as much wear and tear on their body. And therefore, what you end up seeing is they're getting paid for less hours on the court, technically. Yes. So it's not fair. Now, if it's proportional to what I felt, if the U.S. Open wanted to pay the women equal, then the women should play a best out of 5, and let's have that. And then that would be fair. I would have no problem with that.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, women only go to 3 sets, don't they, in tennis?
They play a best out of 3, where the men play a best out of 5.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so that's automatically.
Mm-hmm. And that's it would only be fair if the women had to play as many sets as the men. If they both played a best out of 5 or best out of 3, that would be fair. Pay them the same.
Most men's actually ends in about 3, doesn't it?
No, there are some very long matches.
I know there are 5 setters, but
there's
on average.
Well, it depends on the tournaments, because the smaller tournaments you have more evenly matched players. When you have like a U.S. Open or Australian Open, what you're having is that first week you have the top players playing against the bottom players, and so yes, those can go quicker. But by the second week, you're having a lot more 4 or 5 set games. You know, if you go over to England, there was I forget how many set game. There was one match that lasted 3 days because it was the longest match in history, and they changed the rules afterwards, and it will now be the longest match in history. But John Isner won, and I forget who he was playing, but you had to win 2 sets, and they were just so evenly matched. It went like, I forget, like 30 some sets. So it was, going back and forth. It was a game of attrition. And the reality, John Isner before that had a really good career ahead of him. That took a lot out of him. It took so much out of him. He kind of tapered off at that point, and not as good. And that's what I mean.
Immediately?
Say again?
Retired immediately?
No, he didn't retire immediately. But he didn't play as long as he might have been able to had he not, been playing for so long. I forget.
Djokovic or someone like that, right?
Say again?
No, Djokovic or Nadal, those sorts of players.
Well, they do. They play. I mean, you'll have matches where like Djokovic, Federer, those guys will play, and you'll have matches that can go so long that it's like 5 hours, 5.5 hours, 6 hours is kind of the longest you would see. And so that's something you don't see very often, something that's going to go over 5 hours.
No. I remember Andy Murray's final Australian Open, 2-3 years ago now?
Yeah.
Towards the end, he got into that, and he was taken to a 5-setter until he was knocked out. All of his games were 5 sets.
Yeah. Well, I decided to look it up. So the longest match, it was June 22nd to 24th of 2010. It was John Isner versus Nicholas Mahut. It lasted 11 hours and 5 minutes over 3 days. And the final set, Isner won 70 to 68. So,
whoa, right on. You would have thought they would have worked up to that one.
So it was 11 hours of play over 3 days. So that's hard on the body.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it is trying.
So when we look at women's sports, the point that I want to address is that when we look at what Scripture says, the argument we're going to make is that men and women are made in the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
It is not merely just about sex or how they identify or what gender. It's about them being made in the image of God, how God made them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
really, the reason you can get to where we are in this culture now is because they're trying to suppress the God they know exists, Romans chapter 1. And in that fight against God, they'll believe anything other than the truth.
They'll even deny the Creator or try to make the Creator and God a separate being.
Yeah. Well,
that's what I was from a live stream where they tried to do that. They said, I don't believe in Yahweh, but I'm not an atheist. So
you have people who will, as it says in Romans 1, they'll worship the creation rather than the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
So, manhood and womanhood is something that is by God's design, God's order, and we can't change that no matter how much we want to. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is the issue that has to be recognized when we are just having these discussions. And so when a secular says, why should my body, if it's my body, why shouldn't I have complete autonomy and authority over myself? It's my body, it's my thinking, it's my identity. I can be whatever I want. Fine.
Mm-hmm. And it only applies to the women, right? It doesn't apply to men because men can't have choices.
The men, well, in the sports sense, you don't see women trying to be men to play in men's sports. But at the core issue, though, is the fact of it. There is a reality, and they want to deny reality and then make an argument based on reasonable thinking. But they have quietly given up the argument of reason when they give up the authority of God, when they give up the reality of the way things are. And this is why you have people that I thought it was really interesting. There was a video of this woman who was outside of a store and pretending to be a cat.
Oh, yes, those ones, furries.
Yes, and she's sitting outside being a cat. And
waiting for the dogs, I suppose.
They put a bowl out and she's licking, the water out of the bowl.
Oh no.
And
my nieces used to do that. Like my ex-niece-in-laws.
So someone came by and kicked her. And all of a sudden she stands up and yells, "What are you doing? You're just a cat." Guys, you're a cat. I kicked a cat. Cats don't talk. Cats don't stand up. Get back on your paws. You're a cat. Right? But when she was kicked, suddenly she's a human again.
Yeah, of course. Put a dog on a lead too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what he should have done is take a rope and throw it over her neck as a leash and start dragging her to the pound.
Ironically,
to the pound.
Ironically, I've seen people walking cats with leads.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. When we look at this, I want us to see there's arguments people will make to get out of having to answer for these things. As we said, they go, well, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. As a Supreme Court justice. Now, a Supreme Court justice may have to rule if, say, Congress passes a bill, which I think they should, that men can't play in women's sports. Mm-hmm. You have a Supreme Court justice who said she can't answer what a woman is. She's not a biologist. But I guarantee you, if that case was to come before her, she will have an opinion on what a woman is. And she's going to say, who identifies as a woman. So suddenly you know what a woman is, right? She should be should not be allowed to have a say on that case because she's not a biologist. And so when you have these coaches in this case who answer that they don't understand the science of it, so that they don't have to answer. It's the avoidance of an answer, and they want to attack people for being unloving. They come to the one coach that came with a shirt, a pro-trans shirt, to on purpose. That's allowed, but having like XXY, that's somehow bad. You see, they don't have the same standard. Right. And by the way, this is what you'll see with people that can't make good arguments. They want censorship because of the fact that what they want to be able to do is have only their point of view to stand. And so when they say that you're not loving, you could do one of two things. You could try to explain how you actually are loving. And that's what I see many Christians do. They'll try to say, no, the most loving thing I could do is tell you the truth.
Yes.
And I really wonder sometimes, and every case is going to be different. So you got to evaluate the person you're talking to, and you make a judgment calls. But are we answering a fool according to their folly, making ourselves the fool when we try to answer how, no, really the most loving thing I could do is to tell someone the truth? Would it be better to address their foolishness as the foolishness it is? So when they say, well, you're unloving because you're not accepting of trans, because my response typically is, oh, so you're unloving because you're not accepting Christians.
Well,
and
that's a different story.
Wrong. I'm like, no, trans are wrong. So you're unloving. Right? Take their argument and apply it against them. When they say, well, you think that trans people don't exist. No, I think they exist. I think they have a mental illness, but they exist. But you're saying Christians don't exist. Why are you fighting against my existence? You take their argument and use it against them. Because when they do that, you quickly see that they will argue your arguments for their quickly come. Suddenly the ball changes. It's like they're going to argue for reality. They're going to argue for absolutes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I had a thought, but I think it's just escaped my head.
From a presuppositional view, if someone was to argue, well, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, I don't know what a woman is. Presuppositionally, we do not give the neutral ground. We don't then say, oh, okay, well, we don't know, so we're not going to answer. No. If they say they don't know, well, then they've just removed their ability to argue on this point at all. So they want to argue with you over the topic of whether trans women can play in women's sports. Well, what is a woman? Well, I don't know. Then you have no say in what a trans woman is. If you can't define it and it's a woman's sport, you've eliminated yourself from this discussion.
Yep.
So when the coach who claimed she doesn't know, she can't do it, well, then the reality is you can't be saying who can and can't play because you have just eliminated yourself from knowledge. So you can't now argue for knowledge. All right? There's an ultimate authority. It's a universal authority. It's an immaterial authority, and it comes from the nature of God. We are not autonomous beings. We are not free the way God is. God is an autonomous being. He has decided what a man is and what a woman is. So any thoughts you have?
Well, biology is the study of life, right?
That would be true.
Bio means life. Ology means to study, right? So if you're a theologist or if you're a theologian, you are studying God, right? That's another thing. I just thought, just to digress, I found a way that you could beat Venus or Serena Williams.
Yeah,
She comes out with no racket. She comes out with no racket.
Yeah, that might be the only way I could beat her.
So I have to add that one. I've got a couple of comical things here to add, so I'll just quickly add this one too. You don't know the cultural things, so there's a recent movie that's come out with Matt Damon called The Odyssey.
I've heard about it. Yes,
one of the soldiers in that is a trans man.
That's the Ellen
Page.
Yeah,
Elliot Page. Gone from Ellen Page to Elliot Page.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that one.
Basically, she got a career because she came out as a lesbian, and then it was known that she was pretty bad to work with because she was just horrible to people, even though she plays like this nice person on TV, giving away things that she got in trouble. So now, how's she going to get attention? Oh, now she's trans.
Well, she also got pregnant in the movie too.
She got pregnant and she was supposed to be a man?
No, she got pregnant in the movie as a woman, but in her debut movie, I think it was, she was playing a woman.
Oh,
and
okay.
She got pregnant by a man. Okay. It was called Juno, I think it was called.
No. Oh.
Anyway, I think that was the first one.
Right, Juno. All right.
Yeah, Juno, Juno, I think it was, if you want to look it up. But anyway, the other thing I'd like to add is a Gremlins reference. So this is another cultural reference for you. In the original one, there's a line in it. It's, I make the illogical logical.
Okay. I don't get. I mean, I understand. I don't get the cultural reference to it, though. Sorry.
It's a movie reference from the movie Gremlins, and one of the lines that one of the characters utters at an inopportune time is, "I make the illogical logical." He's an inventor, so he makes things that are. He takes what is logical and he makes it illogical. So this is what they're trying to do with the women becoming men's thing.
Yeah. Now I want to point out for the Christians, right? And I don't know this Sophie Cunningham, I think's her name. I don't know if she professes to be a Christian. I doubt it, because from what I heard, she was like, she doesn't have an issue with trans. She just doesn't want them playing in women's sports. And, you know, the issue, though, is I want us to see how the reaction when she came out and said something that is common sense. What was the reaction? They wanted to force her to change her view. They keep asking about it, keep pressuring her, keep trying to make her feel that she has to change her view. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they can't handle disagreement. This is what we see with Christians defending the faith. They want to pressure you. They want you to feel that you know there's something wrong with you to have this view. And so I think that she's an example of someone who is not having the fear of man. I don't think she's a Christian, but this is how we need to take things. Far too often, when Christians are challenged, well, we want to be liked by people, so we just cave in. And this is why Christianity has become anemic in the culture, is because people that profess to be Christians are not willing to stand up for the truth that comes from God, the one that can't be wrong. And they'll cave. They'll go on and say, well, let's get to a mutual field. We'll give up our truth, and you give up what you think is true, and we come to some neutral place, and then let's argue from there. Once you've given up the truth, you've already lost. Why would we do that? And so this one player is standing up against an onslaught of people, and I really, I'll make it political in this sense. One of the things that we're seeing, a real big change that Donald Trump has brought here in America, and I think around the world, is you had these Marxists all over the place looking to censor people, pressure people to have only their view be heard, so that the mob thinks that's all there is. And the reality is you had a guy like Donald Trump who just says it like it is. And people are like, wow, yes, it's refreshing to hear someone use common sense. So what you see is that now you have a lot of politicians who are standing up to this. Even a guy like, John Fetterman here in Pennsylvania. He's standing up against his own party because, here's a guy, he doesn't need the accolades. He doesn't need the money from the Democrats. He funded his own campaign. He's another billionaire from Wall Street. And then that's the thing. I think you saw like a Trump, an Elon Musk, a John Fetterman. They're not looking to enrich themselves in their office. In fact, Trump and Elon lost lots of money by getting involved in politics. And so, but that's not, you can't say that for like AOC and all the left. They suddenly somehow magically make money. And Ilhan Omar, she made so much, she went from 30,000 to 30 million, and then all of a sudden when she starts getting investigated, it's back to 30,000. Wow, magic. And so we need to be willing to stand up. I stood up on the issue of abortion in that grocery store. Why? Well, that woman was being loud enough for everyone to hear, and she wanted to share her opinion. Therefore, I have every right to share my opinion equally as loud. I wasn't going to let her get away with belittling. Now, do I do that always? No, there's times where, I was just at my bride and I went out for pizza, and there was a guy that I could tell he had just done either an Ironman or something. He had the medal around his neck. They were the way he and his wife were dressed. I figured he did. I saw on the back of the car it had a 22. So that's usually for a marathon. So. I said, hey, what was the race you just did? Now, I will admit, looking at him and his wife, they didn't look like they were people that typically do marathons. I'm just saying, I judge them. But they actually are HIIT instructors. HIIT is high intensity interval training. And I'm going, okay, you guys are both like 50, 60, 70 pounds overweight. But I've known people who are really, I used to run with a guy that was 40, 50 pounds overweight, and he could outrun me every day. So there you do have those people that naturally can do that. But it was kind of interesting because he mentioned, one of the places by us where, they have where he would train, where he would do HIIT classes, and he didn't like the one because the guy's politics. The guy's politics was that he supported Trump.
Yeah, there you go.
I wanted to just turn and say, to this guy with his black fingernail polish, well, I agree with, the Nax owner's policies, and I didn't, was that, now if he was attacking Christianity, maybe I'd have more of an issue. That was more political. So, but there's times where I think I want to say things. I keep my mouth shut. We don't have to, we don't always have to be, saying what we think. There was a Christian who was arrested because he was offended by Muslims that were praying in the street. Now, this is becoming a trend in America, elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, it's all over now where they're purposely going to streets, blocking traffic so that they could pray. and a Christian started preaching the gospel to them while they were praying. The Christian got arrested, which I find very interesting because I've seen videos in the States here where Christians are just outside praying, not just praying like in a circle outside, and Muslims are hitting them, and police were, nothing happened. Yeah. So, this is the thing that when they're putting it out because they were trying to force you to accept their view, as this woman in the grocery store, I'm more likely to speak out at times like that. And
I wouldn't blame you.
There are times that we must stand up because the silence allows them to continue with what they're doing in trying to, because their goal is to end Christianity in public square. That should be reserved for the four walls of your church. Remember, these are coming from people who said, well, hey, you shouldn't, we just want to be homosexual and we should be able to do whatever we want in our own bedrooms. And people said, yes, are you going to keep it there? And they said, of course they're not. Because what do they do now? Now they want to tell you Christians, you have to be the ones to go and stay within your four walls because you shouldn't be in the public square. Because now that they've been there for a long time, right? Christians away. What do you say?
Atheists have been doing that for a longer time than the trans issue has been an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Staying within your church, don't tell us anything. We can implant anything into your brain, but you can't implant anything in ours.
And that's the thing. And so, and this is why I, as we look at this and discuss this, I think it does have some ways of how we as Christians should approach apologetics. So. I'm going to switch gears. First, we'll go to a word from our sponsors because, well, actually, I should do a sponsor here is Let's Church. Let's see. There we go. My mug, Let's Church. I don't know if you guys noticed that I'm usually drinking from my Let's Church mug, but if you go on to our podcast, the Christian podcast community, you will see that you could search any of the podcasts out there. If you're trying to figure out when was it that I had Norm, the Church of Christ pastor, on, well, you could go in and search at Let's Church and search all the episodes that he was on, because there were 2 of them. And so that is a search engine that, and now there are a bunch of podcasts and YouTube channels all out there. So go check out lets.church, LETS.church. One of our other sponsors, a long sponsor of ours, is MyPillow. They have great products. I love their products. It really is. Sleep is important. So I do encourage you to go and check out some of their products. Do what you can to help yourself get a better night of sleep. Just go to mypillow.com, use the promo code SFE. That lets them know that you heard about them from us, keeps them sponsoring us, which we're very happy for. So if you want to go to mypillow.com, use promo code SFE. All right, while we were doing the show, I got a email that came in here. And so I haven't fully read this, so this could be bad. But I saw it was last week's show. So let's see, Nicholas, and Nicholas has been on here before, but he said, just wrapping up listening to last week's show with Phil Baer. He made the statement that Calvin said, quote, "If you disagree with me, then you are disagreeing with the Holy Spirit," unquote. I was doing some research, and by the way, I will say I meant to go look that quote up. I found that very hard to believe, and I that's one that I should really ask Phil if he could support that claim, because where he said he's got the footnote, I would love to see that. But I go on with Nicholas's email. I was doing some research with AI. Well, okay, make sure AI. I will say this: I tell AI it has to cite make its citations when it quotes things, because I want to go and double check. It was really funny because so I'm going to be preaching next week I have a sermon I've preached before, and I figured, all right, let me put it into AI just to clean up the English. That's what I do. I have it where I tell it it can't change the content. It can reform words for better English. It can add illustrations or quotations, but if it adds a quote, it's got to cite it so that I can go and double check that. Because illustrations, I have books that, for illustrations and quotes that I would use. And quite frankly, I could just do it easier with AI because it reads through it and comes up with better illustrations or quotations. The irony, though, was I had a quote from Luther that I got from somewhere, and it came back to me and said, it footnoted it saying, this is attributed to Luther, but there's no citation for it. So it actually corrected me saying this is Luther. So when I preach it, I'm going to say this is attributed to Luther versus saying Luther said. It even corrected in that way. But I get back to Nicholas's email. I was doing some research with AI and had to check the question. Had it check my question of whether Luther ever said or taught with varying different sources, etc. It has come back with an emphatic no. Rather, Calvin said that in regard to God's word alone and not his commentary on God's word, rather it seems he could be conflating what he has read about political opponents of Calvin within Geneva and what they were saying about his theology in relation to his governance, which, which was because the theology heavily influenced the civil laws and religious courts of Geneva, that it would seem then that to disagree with Calvin was to disagree with God. You know the politics well, so you would understand that the statements made about Calvin from his governance in Geneva sound a lot like oppositional rhetoric to sway others in order to change political and religious ideals, much like we see today in our own country. What better way to encourage even loyal followers of John Calvin to doubt his soundness and wanting to distance themselves from him than to get them to believe that to disagree with him means that they're disagreeing with God. Most faithful Christians would not accept that coming from any man, even if it were their own pastor, etc. I am just barely learning about Calvin, so I don't know this part of history yet, but I am confident it will come up. He goes on, says, I am disappointed that Phil would try to use an oppositional statement and apply to John Calvin. I want to believe that that it was an accident and that it got conflated like I think may have happened, and not knowingly order to sway others to his view, which would have been deceptive. Okay, so with that, I got the sense from Phil he was a genuine kind of guy. I do admit that what I have found often is that many people have quotes, and people will even cite the citation of a quote, and it is from someone who is, in opposition. And they'll say, so-and-so says this. And when you read only one side of an argument, you could read someone's quote, like I just explained, I had a quote from Luther that I thought was a quote, but I didn't look at the citation. I got it from someone else, and I just put it down. And it may have just been folklore. you have people that do that. I remember a case with there was a guy who became very well known for an article he wrote against John Piper, calling John Piper a heretic. And he argued that John Piper believes in a works righteousness. Mm-hmm. And he wrote this whole article. It was ended up being translated into dozens of languages. People ended up writing books, and they were citing this article. This guy ended up writing further on it. And it became an issue where Piper himself had to respond to it. But Piper being Piper, he likes to be nuanced, so he doesn't just clearly lay things out. Mm-hmm. Now, this guy was loosely affiliated with Striving for Eternity, with a ministry. We had a podcast. Before we had the Christian podcast community, we had someone that was partnered with us. They set up a network, and he was trying to. They were promoting this guy with this article. And I challenged the author, and I said, "Look, you got to really support the claim." And he was like, "The evidence is there." And he challenged me to do the work. And I said, "Look, if I'm going to do this, I just understand if you're wrong, I'm going to call you out on it." And he's like, "I'm not wrong." Well, I did the research. I ended up downloading everything I could from Piper. This is before AI. And I went through, I read this guy's article. I went and made sure I got the books and the things he was citing. I read through all of those books from Piper, the citations. I then went back to the article again, and then I started doing searching and things like this. And fortunately with Logos, I had a lot of Piper's books there. And this Piper was actually making an argument against works righteousness. He was arguing against why can't I remember the other initial, but Wright. I forget the name, but it's two initials and then Wright.
NT Wright?
Yes, NT Wright, thank you. NT Wright, who was arguing for works righteousness, and Piper's arguing against that. Now, part of what this article did was it actually took a quote directly from Piper, but attributed it to Piper. When you read Piper, it was Piper putting a quote from N.T. Wright. Mm-hmm. That's dishonest. There was the most damning argument that he had was where he quotes Piper saying, Piper said, "Works are necessary to earn salvation," unquote. I could not find that quote anywhere. There was no citation for it in this article. Mm-hmm. So I challenged that guy. I called him up and said, "Well, where is this one quote from? I can't find it." He's like, I said, "I found a quote where it says works are necessary for salvation, and that context is sanctification works being necessary in our sanctification." And he said, "Well, that's what Piper means." I go, no. You cannot add the word earned, make it about regeneration, and do that by adding, you can't put it in quotes and add to it. And he's like, "Well, that's what he means." No, he made it clear that's not what he means. You can't attribute a meaning to him when he argued the opposite. Okay? But so many people were quoting this article, and they didn't go back and do what I did, which took hours and hours and hours of work to go through all the articles, to go through all the books, read through them in context. That took time. Well, people are lazy. So what do? They see something that someone says and they trust it and they go with it.
Yep.
That very well could be what happened. And that's what Nicholas is kind of, I think, hoping. So I'm gonna have to ask Phil about that. He said, "If you have Phil's book, I don't. Maybe you could find the section where he supposedly has that quote coming from John Calvin." I got a red flag when you asked him the question, do you believe there are people in hell right now? And he didn't answer yes, but tried to explain it away. At that moment, I knew something was off with Phil, though I can't quite put my finger on which is why I decided to start checking what he was saying towards the end of the show. Maybe my discernment is off base, but I think there's something off with Phil. Actually, the issue of the hell, when he was hesitating, you might have seen that I hesitated too, because he may be being a little bit more precise. We use the terms heaven and hell, and we use the terms heaven and hell interchangeably for the resting place of the dead, the temporary resting place of the dead that exists now, and the future eternal one. What do I mean by that? When you look in Revelation, it says that Hades, which is what we call hell, is thrown into the lake of fire, which is also called hell. And so I assumed that the hesitation when I said, are there people in hell today? He may be thinking hell as the eternal state, not the temporal state. And for that reason, I thought maybe he is trying to say, well, there's Hades or Sheol, which is a temporary place, and he's thinking hell as a permanent place. And so for that reason, I even tried to backpedal a little. And I think I tried to point out, well, the temporary place, that would be temporary today. And I backpedaled because he may be trying to be more precise. And he struck me as an individual that does try to be precise. So for that reason, I didn't have as much issue with that, Nicholas, because I kind of felt that he very well could have been trying to be more precise with that. But the reason I ask those questions, what I was doing with them was I was going through the 5 points of Calvinism without using labels. That's why I told him he was a 4-point Calvinist, but the fourth point was not limited atonement. It was the preservation of the saints, which even, our Jacob Arminius would disagree with his position on that. So the thing though is that what I was doing was walking them through definitions, and limited atonement. If you believe anybody is in hell at any point in the temporal, whether you want temporal or eternal, if there's anyone in hell ever, then in one way or another, the atonement was limited, because it obviously applied to everyone. It's not universal. Right? Now we're just breaking down how God does that, right? And there is a thing called classical Calvinists that held to a position that Christ died for all, 1 John 2:2, that he was a propitiation, not for believers only, not for us only, but for the whole world. And so that is what many of the Puritans and many of the reformers held to before John Owen's work on the death of death. If you go and look at my sermon I did at Jeffrey Rice's conference on the history of Calvinism, I went through the way Calvinism changed. By the way, the early Calvinists had 8 points, not 5. They ended up matching the 5 points of the Remonstrance. So what you ended up having was that John Calvin came about and had a logical argument that he lays out in his very good work of the death of death, and where he lays out for a limited atonement that many hold to today, which is the idea that Christ's death on the cross was limited at the cross only for the elect. You see, the question becomes the when was it? Everyone that accepts that there's anyone in hell accepts that there is a limitation to the atonement. The question is, was it limited in its offer or in its application? That's where the real rub is. And so, but where the people were arguing and still do today argue is that no, the atonement is for everyone. Everybody, it's applied to everyone. And that's universalism. So, Nicholas, I will try to reach out to Philip and see if I can get an answer to that. There was someone on X that wanted me, and I still got to do that. Reach out to Phil because he wanted to have Phil on his show and didn't know how to get a hold of him. And so I will have to reach out to Phil and do that. So I see Andrew back in. So Andrew, anything else you care to talk about or share before we wrap up?
Well, we had the conference on the weekend that I was telling you about.
Yes.
Just gone with Luke Barnes and Glenn Scrivener, and I came home with that.
Well, okay. What for people in the audio?
It's a book.
Put it back up. What's the book title?
It's called The Air We Breathe.
Okay, and then what's the subtitle?
By a guy called Glenn Scrivener, and I got it autographed.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because he was the other speaker that was there.
Now, what's that book about? I saw equality in there.
Okay, I'll read you the front of it. So, it's about freedom, kindness, progress, and equality, and how we all come to believe in those things.
Okay.
So, Glenn Scrivener is a UK, the ex-Aussie living in UK, has his channel. I forget the channel, but he's on YouTube.
An ex-Aussie living in the UK, but wait, didn't all of the Aussies come from the UK except for the natives? I mean,
oh no, we send the smarter ones back.
They sent their criminals there, so yeah,
we sent the smarter ones back. Anyway, he's been over there for about 20 years. He's an Anglican pastor.
Yeah. Jesse says it sounds liberal, but it could be that it's someone
no,
who
he's
is
not. He's not.
Them. Yeah.
He's definitely not. And he's a good character.
Yeah.
And so is Luke Barnes, because he's another legend. He dropped an absolute bomb of a joke in the middle of a question thing.
Okay.
Basically, along the lines of Anglicans are agnostics. They at least try to turn up to church every second week.
All right. With that, let me see. Next week, there will be no show next week, just so you guys know. No show on the 13th. I will be traveling. I don't have anything set as far as people coming on the next few weeks. So if folks have someone that they want to come on, that's how Phil came in here. We will try to set up that debate, I hope, for the 27th. So we're going to shoot for. We'll see how that goes. And with that, just remind you guys to strive to make today an eternal day for the glory of God. And we'll see you next time. Bye now.
Ciao.